We are going to go over the notes over 21.1, which is station 5. And this is factoring. We're going to be factoring when there's an understood 1 in front of the x squared. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, Mrs. Gorns, what is factoring? Factoring is really the opposite of the multiplication that we have just been doing in station 3. Remember when we took a problem where we had something like x minus 1 times x plus sorry guys, this mouse isn't working very well for me right now. It's moving around on me. Let's try again. X plus 7. And we would multiply that out and we got something like x squared. We would get plus 6x, and then we would get a minus 7. Okay, so this is when we did multiplying. Now what we're doing is we're just going back the other way. You're going to be given a problem like this, the x squared plus 6x minus 7, and I want to know what goes in these two sets of parentheses. Okay. So factoring again is just the formal definition is I'm writing a quadratic, which is your x squared, as the product multiplication of two linear factors, since both of these have understood 1s as the exponent on the x. Okay, so it's kind of just our opposite way of going backwards for multiplication or multiplying polynomials. So in this case, for all of these problems in this lesson, there's going to be an understood 1 in front of your x squared. Now, in this case, you'll notice that the a value, we'll talk about that some here, the a value is in front of the x squared, the b value is in front of the x, and the c value is all by itself at the very end. So in this case, the big idea of this lesson, and I'm going to show you down here in just a minute kind of a fail-safe way, a method that we use, and it's called the X method. Lots of people use this X method. But in this case, really what we're doing is I'm just trying to find the factors of C. Now, remember, factors just mean multiplication. So what two numbers multiply together to give me C, to give me that 2 here, that also at the same time add together to give me B? So a lot of times I have the students take this C value, take this 2, and I have them start listing out the numbers that multiply together to give me 2. Well, 2's an easy one. I'm starting with an easy number here with you guys. 2 would be 1 and 2. Okay, well if I add 1 plus 2, that does give me this 3 in the middle. So one way you can do it is I can go, okay, well I know I'm going to have my two sets of parentheses because that's what I'm trying to get back to. Now, in this case, I'm also going to go and then look at this x squared. The way I get an x squared is by taking x times an x, because remember, they both have understood 1s on them as the exponent. X times x gives me the x squared. Now, I take these two numbers that we just found, and I put them in the parentheses at the very end. It does not matter which one goes where. I could flip-flop this 1 and 2, but they are both positive. 1 and positive 2 will add together to give me 3, and so in this case I get x plus 1 times x plus 2. And there's my answer. Okay. Now, I just told you I'd explain this X method. It is a fail-safe way. You just have to work on those factors. And I'm going to show you a way we can do that. Okay. In this case, the X method says draw your big X. So if you'll notice down here at the bottom of the page, I have a big X already drawn down. In the top part of this X, here in this area, up here in this top part of the X, I'm going to multiply A times C. So remember, my A is here at the beginning, B is in the middle, and C is the number without an x on it. So in this case, I'm doing 1 times 10, and that 1 times 10, or just a 10, is going to go in the top part of my x. In the bottom part of my x, in the very bottom here, in this section here, is where I'm going to put my b value. So in this case, my b value is 7. So I'm going to put down here in the bottom of my x the number 7. Okay. Now here's where it's very similar to the problem I just did above, is you're now going to find the numbers that, you're going to now find the numbers that multiply together to give you this 10, that also at the same time add together to give you 7. So a lot of the times I'll have students write that number 10 off to the side and just again start listing the numbers that multiply together to give you 10. We would have 1 and 10, and then we have 2 and 5. And there's all my numbers. So now I have to ask myself which set is going to add together to give me that 7 in the middle. If you notice here, 1 plus 10 is going to give me 11. That doesn't work. 2 plus 5 is 7. So this is the factors, the sets that I want. I'm now going to put the 2 and the 5 on either side of my x. Now, it doesn't matter again which one goes where. The 2 could go here on the right, the 5 could go on the left. Doesn't matter which one goes where. I always now take my a value, which in this case, remember, was that understood 1 in front of the x squared, and I divide each of those numbers by a. Now, to be honest, guys, in this section, in this chapter, in this station, your a value is always going to be 1, so I'm always going to just be dividing by 1. Now, because of this x squared in the front, I'm now going to put an x down there in the bottom of the one, with the ones in the bottom of each of those fractions. And now I really have my answer. I start with the bottom of the fraction and I read it going up. So bottoms up. I'm going to read it from the bottom up. So my answer here, the first parenthesis, and again, it doesn't matter which one I read first, 1x or just x plus 2. And in my second parentheses, I have 1x, but it's a positive 5, so I have 1x plus 5. And there's my answers. That's the part that would be my answer to this problem. Okay. So if we go to the next page at the back here, okay, I have a bunch of other problems to try. So take a minute and try this one, the 8x or x squared plus 8x plus 15, either the first method I showed you or that x method, whichever way you like better. So again, pause the video, try this one, and then come back and check it here in just a minute. Okay, so I'm going to show you the x again. Whoa, I'm having a hard time tonight, guys, with these x's. So I'm going to just use my lines here to draw my x's. There's my x. Let's go ahead while I'm at it and draw a couple more x's here on some of these problems. Okay, so here in the first one, I'm going to remember multiply 1 times 15, your a times your c. So 1 times 15, my 15 goes up here on the top. My b value goes down in the bottom. So now I'm finding the numbers that multiply together to give me 15, but at the same time add together to give me 8. So what I would do again over here off to the side is I'm going to write those numbers, the factors of 50. Gosh, guys, I'm sorry, this mouse. I'm trying to go back to my desktop so it's a little bit better quality, but then I have to use the mouse. So the mouse is really acting weird tonight. So 15 is going to give me 1 and 15. Sometimes I think that's the hardest one for a lot of people to remember, is that it's 1 times that number. So don't forget about it, because it can make a difference if it's one of our answers or not. 2 does not divide into 15, and let me show you this, is that some of you that are not good with your multiplication facts, that's when I would go to your calculator. Now here's my desktop calculator, and I'm going to show you the quickest and easiest way here to be able to check to see if that number is a factor. So we had 15, we knew 1 and 15, but if I take 15 divided by 2, you'll notice I get a decimal. That's not it. That's not a factor. So now if I try again and I do 15 divided by 3, oh, 3 and 5 work. So I can now come back here to my smartboard, my page here. I can put 3 and 5 down. Let's try though, let me go back to your calculator. Let me try 4. So I'm going to do 4 and 15. And you'll notice 4 and 15 gave us a decimal, so that one didn't work either. But if I go to try the next number is 5, and I already have 5 listed. So that's how you know when to stop. That's how you know you have all your factors of these numbers. Well, now I have to check which set adds up to give me 8. 1 and 15 is 16, so it's not that. So I'm going to do 3 plus 5. Oh, that is 8. So I'm going to put my 3 and my 5 on either side of my x. Remember, I'm going to divide each one of these by my a value, which in this case is 1. I'm going to put an x down in the bottom of the fraction, and then I read my answer from the bottom up. So in my parentheses for my answer is going to be x plus 3 times x plus 5. Okay, now just kind of very quickly I'm going to go over these last couple here, and then we'll get to the very last slide, and it's pretty quick. In this case, pay attention to your signs. The signs make the difference. So in this case, again, if I'm filling in my x, I'm asking myself 1 times 6 gives me a 6 up here in the top, but now my b value is a negative 5. So now I have to ask myself, what's going to give me a positive 6 when I multiply, but add together to give me a negative 5? So some of you, when you start to think of your numbers that multiply together to give me 6, 1 and 6, but then 2 and 3 also work. But if I add those, here that gives me 7, this gives me 5. How am I going to get a negative 5? And remember, I can take a negative times a negative, and that's going to give me a positive number, but when I add them, that would give me a negative 7. So here I would get a negative and a negative. Oh, that gives me the negative 5. So I'd have negative 2 and a negative 3. Now I'm going to divide each of these by my 1, put my x in the bottom. And now for my answer, again, reading from the bottom up, I'm now going to have x minus 3, and I have x minus 2. And there's my answer. So here's the biggest thing I would make sure you understand is that if I have a positive number, then either those numbers both could be positive when I'm multiplying, or it could be a negative. If I have a negative number for my a times my c for the top of the x, then I'm going to have one positive and I'm going to have one negative. So let's drop down here for just a minute and try, or look at this one, the x squared minus 2x minus 8. So here in this case, again, I'm going to multiply my 1 times my negative 8. So negative 8 goes up here in the top of my x. My b value, which is my negative 2, is going in the bottom of my x. So kind of going back to this part that I just talked about, this is very important here. So I think I would make sure you get that down, is that I have a negative 8 here. So that tells me it's this last option where I want one positive and one negative. So then I have to think about my numbers that multiply together to give me 8. Again, use your calculator if you have to, or think about what multiplies together to give you 8. 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Well, 1 and 8 is not going to give me 2, but 2 and 4 would, and it would give me a negative 2. Now, if you're not sure, put the negative on one of them. If I put the negative here on the 2, check with your calculator. Negative 2 plus 4 actually gives me a positive 2. But we want a negative 2 down here. So that means I'm going to make this a positive 2, but I'm going to make that a negative 4. So negative 4 plus 2 does give me a negative 2. So now my two numbers on the side are 2 and negative 4. I'm now going to divide each one of these by my 1x and then read them from the bottom up. So on this first one, it would be x plus 2. And the second one would be x minus 4. And there's your answer. Okay, so take a minute, maybe pause the video and try these other 4 on your own with the positive negatives. See what you do and see how you get it. And then we will go from there. If you have any questions as you work and get these notes and you try these, let me know. So hopefully you've paused and now you're back. In this one, you should have gotten the answer as x minus 4 times x minus 5, because 4 times negative 5 gives me a positive 20, but it adds together to give me negative 9. Here on x squared minus 8x minus 9, you should have had an answer of x minus 9 and x plus 1, because negative 9 plus 1 is going to give me that negative 8 in the middle. The next one, I did factors of negative 18 that I'll add together to give me a 7. In this case, the larger number, the 9, is going to be positive at this time, but my 2 is going to be negative, because positive 9 plus a negative 2 will give me a positive 7 in the middle. And last here, x squared minus 3, or positive 3x minus 18. So again, here's the thing I would point to you on this one is you'll notice here is I had both a negative 18 for both of these problems at the very end. But you'll notice here, because of what the middle number is, because I wanted the middle number to be 7, here I want that middle number to be 3, it's going to give me a different answer. So here, this answer, because I wanted to find the factors of negative 18 that add together to give me negative 3, I'm going to have one positive and one negative. So in this case, this would be x minus 3 times x plus 6, because 6 times 3 is 18. Positive times a negative would be negative 18. But if I add 6 and negative 3 together, it does give me a positive 3. And again, I would say to you guys, it doesn't matter which way I write this. If you wrote it as x plus 6 and then x minus 3, perfectly fine. As long as you have your signs correct and the correct number, we're good to go. And the last slide here. If you go back to station 4, and we've kind of done it on Problem of the Day several times, is that zero product property, is that we can solve quadratics that are factored by using our zero product property by setting each parenthesis equal to 0. Now, it has to be equal to 0 to be able to factor it and solve. So one of the reasons we did it with those last two slides is if I give you a problem here like x squared minus 8x plus equals negative 12, first of all, I have to make this equal to 0. The way I'm going to make that equal to 0 is I'm just going to move this negative 12 over to the other side by adding 12 to it. Now, you'll notice this one's an x squared, this one's a negative x. I can't actually add those two together. So in this case, when I go to rewrite this side, this is going to be x squared minus 8x. And then it would be plus 12 here, because I can't combine it with any of those others. Those others have x's with them. Now it's equal to 0. Now I can do the same thing I just did on the other slide, where I have to factor this. So if you do your x method, I'm trying to, in this case, find my factors of 1 times 12, factors of 12, that will add together to give me a negative 8. So if you go through your factors of 12, you would have 1 and 12. We have 2 and 6. And we have 3 and 4. Now I need a positive 12 here, so either both of these need to be positive or both of them need to be negative. And because this is negative in here, both of these are going to be negative. So if I did -1 and -12, that's -13. -2 and -6, that one's -8. So those are my two numbers that are going to go on the sides of my x. I'm going to divide both of these by my 1, put my x in the bottom, and then I'm reading my answer from the bottom up. So I'm going to have one set of parentheses that is 1x minus 2, or x minus 2, and another set of parentheses that is x minus 6. Now I have my two parentheses that are being multiplied together and it's set up equal to 0. So now I can use my zero product property where I take x minus 2, set it equal to 0, and I can take x minus 6, set it equal to 0, and now I just have those two problems to solve. So here I could add 2 to both sides, add 2, and I get an answer of x equals 2. Here, add 6 to both sides, and so we get an answer of x equals 6. So here's one of my answers. Here's my second answer. Okay. So try B. Here in this case, again, pause it, try it on your own, see what you get. So here in this case, guys, I would say, first of all, your first step is going to be to subtract that 15 from both sides. So now I'm going to have the problem x squared minus 2x minus 15 is equal to 0. Now I can factor that if you use your x method. I'm finding the factors of -15 that'll add together to give me -2. So I'd have x minus 5 times x plus 3 equal to 0. And now I would use my zero product property. So set up your two problems. First I would have x minus 5, try just to say space, equal to 0. And then I'd have x plus 3 equal to 0. And now I solve both of those. Add 5 on this one, so you get x equals 5. Here on this one, subtract 3 from both sides, so I get x equals -3. And there's my answer. Okay. Last problem is then it says a rectangular porch has dimensions of x plus 12. Let me redo this. There we go. A little easier to read. X plus 12 and x plus 5. If the area of the porch floor is 120 square feet, what are its length and width? So in this case, what I want to do first, let me set it up and I'm going to do it. I think it's easier to see and understand here. Remember the area is length times width. So I'm going to take my x plus 5 times my x plus 12, but I know that's going to be equal to 120. Now, some of you are going to want to take x plus 12 equal to 120 and x plus 5 equal to 120. Well, I can't do that because remember it's called the zero product property. So I'm going to want this to be 0. I'm going to want that 120 to be 0. Well, first, I'm going to have to do my FOIL, my multiplication. Remember FOIL or distributive property, a lot of you guys have done it at. I'm going to have to multiply this out. So I'm going to have to do x times x and x times 5, and then 12 times x and 12 times 5. So in this case, if I go to do that, if I FOIL or multiply that out, actually, I would get x squared plus 5x plus 12x plus 60 equals 120. If I go ahead and combine my like terms, I would get x squared plus 5x and 12x is 17x plus 60 equals 120. But now that it's factored, or now that it's multiplied, sorry, not factored, now that it's multiplied, now I can subtract that 120 from both sides. So if I go to subtract that 120, I can subtract the 120 from the 60 and from both sides. So now I'm going to get the problem x squared plus 17x minus 60 is equal to 0. Now I can factor it. So now do your x method. You're trying to find the factors of negative 60. So I'm going to have my negative 60 up here in the top. I'm going to have positive 17 on the bottom. And this is a good place that, again, 60 is a pretty big number. So I would have to, off to my side, list out my factors. If you're not the best at multiplication factors, use the calculator again. So 1 in 60 here. I'm going to clear out everything here. So we gotta remember we're doing 60, so I would do, 60 divided by 2, just trying to show you guys. So there's 30. So I'd have here in my list, I would have 2 and 30. Now try 3. If I did 60 divided by 3, again using that calculator, you would actually get it to be 20. So now try 60 divided by 4. Well, 4 goes in evenly, it's 15. So now I have on my list, now I have 4 and 15. And some of you are going to start seeing your pattern, and as soon as you get some of them, you'll start to know, oh, there it is. Well, we multiplied here just a minute ago 5 times 12 to get the 60, so we know 5 and 12 are a set. 6 and 10, 6 times 10 is 60. Okay, I can check here, 60 divided by 7. Oh, decimal. Try 60 divided by 8. Oops, sorry. Divided by 8. Oops. Cleared out. 60 divided by 8. It's another decimal, so that doesn't work. 60 divided by 9. Another decimal, and there's 10. So now I have all my factors listed. Because it's negative, I want one of these to be negative, one of them to be positive. So in this case, 3 and, oh, gosh, sorry guys, that was horrible. 3 and 20 are my factors at work. If I make the 3 negative, so this would be negative 3, positive 20. Divide both of those by my 1x. Divide this one by my 1x. And so now, let me go back here to my, so now I would have my factors of x minus 3 times x plus 20 is equal to 0. Remember, I'm setting up each parentheses now to solve. I'm setting them both equal to 0. And x plus 20 equal to 0. And I'd solve both of those. On this one, I'd add the 3 to both sides, so I'd get x equals 3. Here I'd subtract the 20 on both sides, so I'd get x equals negative 20. Now, in this case, remember that I was trying to find what are the length and width. So if I plug in negative 20 plus 12 is negative 8. Can I have the length of my side of my porch be a negative 8? Or even if I plug in negative 20 here, negative 20 plus 5 is negative 15. Can I have the side of one of my porch be negative? Not possible. Can't have a negative side, negative length of something. So if I plug in 3 plus 12 would give me 15. And then 3 plus 5 gives me 8. So if they wanted to know the length of my sides, my answer, okay, these are the answers for x, my length, and it doesn't matter which one's which, my length would be 8, and my width would be 15. And there's my answer. Okay, so again, practice your X method. It's really going to help, and it's going to lead right into station number 7, because now instead of A always being 1, my A value is going to be a different number, but we're still going to use this X method. Okay. Try either a worksheet or your HMH or the activity there for that station, whichever one you want. If you have questions, please let me know.